Cuando compras en JCPenney los outfits del verano con tu cupón de 20% extra, no solo te estás preparando para las fiestas y el verano, te estás preparando para lucir super top toda la temporada, con 20% extra en tu bolsillo. La prueba está en el recibo. Sí, es JCPenney. Cupón válido hasta el 22 de junio en selección de estilos. Aplican algunas exclusiones. Detalles en la tienda o jcp.com.
Stop right there. Yeah, you. If you like all things entertainment, current events, or Hollywood, then look no further. Creator to Creators, hosted by director Meosha of Horror Noir, interviews filmmakers and creatives from around the world. Join in on the fun, guest celebrities, and informative information to have as a creator. Hit subscribe and stay connected to Creator to Creators.
Welcome to another episode of Creators to Creators today. Today, we have a special guest.
David Worth.
Woohoo! You made it to the show. Thank you for coming on.
My pleasure, Meosha. My pleasure. Totally.
So I'm very familiar of you because I got a chance to work with you. I'm so blessed to have worked with you in the presence of greatness, I must say. So it's an honor. And it was amazing. We worked together on Borrowed Time. So exciting. It was so awesome just to see your process, you and Alan working on that together. But I always like to start with every guest, like from the beginning. How is young, David, when you're a kid, where did you grow up and how did you kind of find your way into the creative world?
When I was your age?
Yes.
Well, I was at UCLA studying filmmaking. And I got to my senior year, and they were going to make a 10-minute film or something like that. And I said, "Is there any mentoring program or internship program to get us into the industry after we graduate?" This is back in the 1960s.
Wow, nice.
The last century. And they said no. And when they said no, I checked out. I said, I'm not going to, because I was already working, had my foot in the door in several places in filmmaking. So I just got out and I bought an 8mm camera and an old viewer, one of those winding viewers that you would run the film through. And I taught myself cinematography, all the things I needed to know, color and black and white film and editing and all those things, until I got enough confidence to go out and start hustling movies. And I worked out of an Econoline van for 10 years and then got lucky and was at the right place at the right time. Ended up being the cinematographer on Clint Eastwood, Bronco Billy, and Any Which Way You Can, which led to my then being the cinematographer on the original Bloodsport and the director on the original Kickboxer. Launched the career of Jean-Claude Van Damme, and ta-da! It only took me 10 years.
Wow. How was that journey? Did you ever feel discouraged through that at all before all that happened? Did you like, oh my God, is this ever going to work? Like, did you ever have those moments?
Oh yes, it took so long, Meosha. It took so fucking long. I would look in the mirror or I'd stare at the bottom of a wine glass or something and go, God damn, it's taking so long. Am I ever going to make it? But I had convinced myself this is all I wanted to do. And people would say, why don't you just do something else? And I'd say, they got to kill me to get me out of here. That's it. I'm committed. I'm 100% committed to it. And I haven't starved in this town yet. And I'm committed 100%. Live or die. Anytime I had a relationship with someone, they became editing room widows because I was just around the clock. And I would tell them right up front, I'm really devoted to learning the film business. I don't have any way in. I don't have any connections or anything like that. I just have to muscle my way through somehow.
That's amazing.
And I just kept on keeping on. And I did this little film called Death Game. Mm-hmm. With Sandra Locke and Seymour Cassell and Colin Kemp.
Wow.
And the director had been shooting for a few days and fired the original cinematographer, and the producer had seen my work
Wow.
on a film called Poor Pretty Eddie. I think it was a feature I did with Shelley Winters and Leslie Uggams and Slim Pickens and Dub Taylor and Ted Cassidy.
Wow.
And
Amazing.
he called and said, "Do you want to take over this film?" I was reluctant. I didn't really want to take over somebody else's mess. But I said, "Who's in it?" And he said, "Sandra Locke and Seymour Cassell and Colleen Camp." I went, "What?" Sandra Locke, who was nominated for an Academy Award for Hardest Lonely Hunter. Seymour, who was nominated for John Cassavetes' film Faces. I'm in.
Yeah.
So I
Sign me up.
committed. Plus, they were shooting with widescreen anamorphic Panavision.
Oh, wow. That's beautiful.
And that was so it was so economically is that the right word? Ergonomically correct that it just fit my body and I could handhold it. And I ended up hand holding it 90% of the time during the 13 days we finished that film.
I bet that was a workout.
That was a workout. You'll see a picture of me in a jacuzzi with Sandra and Seymour and Colleen with hand holding the Panaflex with a backload 1,000-foot magazine on it. That was back in the old days when I was young and could do that stuff.
That's amazing. What did you learn during that experience?
Well, every project for me is a learning experience because I was kind of self-taught.
Okay.
And on this project, when I was setting it up, I said, this is kind of a horror film. It's not really hardcore, but it's kind of horrific.
Yeah.
So I'm going to underexpose it half a stop to 3/4 of a stop. Just automatically, I'm going to do it. I'm going to light it at a 2.2 and shoot it at a 2.8, basically. And that ended up working out very, very well for me because Sandra was very fair skinned, translucent, and it brought out her skin tone. So she loved that, the fact that I underexposed it. And I also learned that when you're in for a penny, you're in for a pound. On this, I was just the cinematographer. 5 weeks after Sandra and I in to look at a rough cut, it was horrendous. It was awful.
Oh, no.
Sandra was sitting like this during all the screening because it was her face up there.
Oh,
and I kept saying, "Where's this shot? Where's that shot?" It was just horrendous. It was awful. It was one of the worst jobs of editing I'd ever seen.
Wow.
And I told the director when it was over, I said, "Take me to the editing room." So he took the work print and Sandra and I back to the editing room, and I was able to see shots on the rack.
Mm-hmm.
And I showed him, I would roll down to a scene and I would fix the scene.
Oh, wow.
And he said, "Oh, that's better."
Nice.
The editor was fired immediately. I became the cinematographer and editor on that film. And then when Seymour Cassell had a big falling out with the director, and he just checked out of the film, basically.
Oh, no.
And he was there the whole time, but he wasn't really taking part, and he would not come back and do his ADR lines. So I had to ADR Seymour's voice myself.
Wow, I didn't know that.
And edit it into the film, frame by frame, sprocket by sprocket, taking out sprockets, putting in sprockets, making it fit. It fits so well that even Eli Roth, when he saw a screening of the film, never realized that Seymour had been dubbed until the director told him, "David dubbed Seymour's voice." Eli said, "What? You got to be kidding me."
Wow, that's incredible.
I was constantly learning on every film that I did, but that was a huge experience. That was a big film in my life because Sandra went on to do Outlaw Josie Wales with Clint Eastwood. Mm-hmm. And she remembered my work and she started nudging Clint about my work.
Fantastic.
And years went by and I did an off-road motorcycle film. I did a Grizzly Adams TV series as a second unit director. And I saw when Clint and Sandra did The Gauntlet. They did a great action film called The Gauntlet, where she's a hooker from Las Vegas. He's a drunk cop that's got to bring her to LA to testify at a trial. And the mafia's after them. It's a big shootout all the way from Las Vegas to LA. So Clint and Sandra were just one-on-one up there all the time. And I was so proud of her. I called her and I said, "Sandra, I'm so proud of you up there with the big guy, giving him everything back that he's given you." And she said, yeah, we had a great time on that shoot. He said, but, he had a big fight with his cinematographer. I said, why?
Yeah.
He said, because he wouldn't shoot by campfire light.
Oh, wow. Really?
Well, this was 1977. This is back in the day.
Yeah.
79, maybe 78, 79, 80. No, it was 77, 78. I said, I just did a whole off-road motorcycle film that I shot by campfire light and with lanterns.
Wow.
And then Sandra asked me a question that would change my life. She said, you wouldn't have a reel of that you could drop off at El Paso for Clint to see, would you?
That's amazing.
And I put that together and I dropped it off, and I got a call from his office in a couple of weeks and said, Clint would like to meet you.
And there it is.
And I walk in that door and say, pleased to meet you, Mr. Eastwood. Call me Clint. And it took several more years because the union didn't want to let me in and all that stuff. But I eventually got to Clint and did 2 films with him as his cinematographer. And that was like me earning my PhD in filmmaking to be with Clint for a year to the day almost, and watch him work. Never raised his voice ever.
Wow.
The whole time.
That's incredible. That's absolutely incredible. Like there are people, like every time I've seen like or ever watched his work or seen his interviews, he just seems like such a really nice guy.
What you see is what you get. He's a very down to earth, very nice, very, very nice, gentle man.
That's awesome.
But don't fuck with him, because he is tough. He is tough. Yeah.
What was it like when you had that moment working with him? Were you like, okay, that my life is it's just my life is going to be different from now on. Like this is amazing.
Well, it could have been a lot more different. When I was, even before we started Bronco Billy, I got message to go to the office to see Clint and the lawyer. I said, "What's up?" He said, "The union is trying to get you out of the film."
Why?
The cameraman's local didn't want me shooting that film because I hadn't come up through their ranks.
Oh, wow. Wow.
I hadn't been a second assistant for 5 years, then a first assistant for 5 years, then an operator for 5 years, and then worked my way into being a group 3 cinematographer so I could wait in line to become a group 2 and a group 1.
Wow. So it's ranks. Holy crap.
That's how it used to be. That's how it used to be. They were eventually sued because that was not a fair way of letting anyone in.
Yeah.
But it was hard. It was very hard. They went after Clint. They went after the producer. They tried to get everyone to. And here's what Clint Eastwood had to do to work with me. He had to not use his company in El Paso, which was all right because of he and Sandra's relationship. He was having a divorce anyway, so he didn't want to use El Paso. So they formed a new company called Robert Daly Productions, which is his producer's production company. Then I signed a contract with Robert Daly, and then Robert Daly signed the union contract. Then I was a group 1 cinematographer with Robert Daly Productions for 7 years.
Wow. Incredible.
Now, here's the problem. After Bronco Billy and Any Which Way You Can, Clint and his producers split. What happened with me? I dropped right back to 0.
Gee, just like that.
And the union said, "You'll never work in this town again."
Wow. What did you feel? What was your plan after that? What did you do? Like, what did you say? Like, nah, I'm not gonna take that.
I didn't know. I didn't know what to do. I didn't have any clear idea. I hadn't been in the guild, and I was a member of the guild. I had joined to work with Clint. I was. I still have I'm a member to this day, but I just put my head down and I thought the phone would ring. It didn't ring for 2 years, even though I had done 2 Clint Eastwood films, nothing.
That's crazy.
Eventually, I wrote a treatment called The Return, which was I took Clint's film High Plains Drifter and put it on a motorcycle And I was pitching it all over town, trying to get that made. And I called the producer of a man called Horace Sandy Howard, and I did my pitch. A little pause at the end. And then he said, "Why don't you call a friend of mine from Italy and pitch him this star, Louis?" And I used Sandy's name. I said, "Sandy wanted me to call in and pitch him an idea." So Ed comes on the phone and said, "Hi, Sandy wanted me to tell you the idea." I says, "It's heat waves on the highway, 100,000 millimeter lens, heat waves on the highway." And this guy rides out of the heat waves on a high-speed motorcycle, goes past the camera. He goes into town. He kills all the bad guys. He kisses the girl. He rides back out of town on the heat, disappears into the heat waves on the highway. There's a pause. He says, "Put it in the future." I said, "Fine, it's in the future."
That's awesome.
There's another pause. He says, "How would you like to go to Rome and direct that film?" I said, "When?" He said, "Come in my office tomorrow."
Wow. Incredible.
It's on a Wednesday. I call him when I go in his office on Thursday. I sign a director and writer's contract. I get a deposit. I bank it. I pack. On Friday, I'm at the airport flying to Rome. On Saturday, I arrive in Rome. That's when the God's production smile on you.
Yeah.
And it happened just that fast. I was sitting in my house in Burbank pitching on Wednesday. I had a deal on Thursday. I had a flight on Friday, and I was in Rome on Saturday prepping the film.
That's incredible. That's like the dream, to have it just.
It never hits like that. Believe me, I've been involved in projects. I'm still involved in projects trying to get Lady Dragon 3 made for 5 years,
Wow.
So
yeah. It's amazing. Like, it's so incredible. Like, just the stories that you have and the things that just how your life just, I mean, we might have a picture of what we want, but life, it just brings you something completely different than what you expect.
Totally.
Which is really exciting. So, because now we're living in an era where we can have, there's digital, right? It's faster. We can shoot it on a phone. We can shoot it on a camera. We don't have to have exactly.
This is what Steven Soderbergh shoots all his films on now.
Yeah, isn't it amazing?
This is what Sean Baker shot the great film Tangerine on now.
Yes, it's absolutely incredible. Do you think now there's no excuse, would you say, for cinematographers or directors to get their work out there now that because of social media?
None. No excuse. No excuse not to get your films, not to get your friends together and make a movie on the weekend. Absolutely no excuse anymore. I used to have an excuse back when I started in the last century because you needed hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes.
You needed trucks full of equipment. You needed big cameras and film and processing and printing and all that. Now all you need is an iPhone. All that has been distilled down to this, and I love it so fucking much.
Yeah, me too. It's incredible. It's incredible. I love that. It's so sad that people don't take people seriously nowadays if you're shooting on a phone. But like you said, Soderbergh has done a series using a phone, a movie. Like,
yes,
why not?
This happened in 2015. The great young filmmaker Sean Baker had used up all of his favors, and he wanted to make a film about the transgender community that he lived near on Santa Monica and Highland in Los Angeles, Hollywood. He walked into that community and he and his writing partner started talking to some of the people there, and he met his 2 stars, and one of the stars told him the urban legend that became the script for the film. And he didn't have any favors left. He couldn't get 60 millimeter cameras for free or film for free. So he said, "Why don't we try iPhone?" And he took out his iPhone 5 and he got a cinematographer. I'm trying to think of his name. It'll come to you in a minute. Who would go along with him. And they used 2 iPhone 5s. They got a snap-on adapter for the lens that made it anamorphic.
Oh,
widescreen.
Yeah.
And they captured the whole film in about 2 weeks.
Wow.
On natural locations and in available and practical light in Hollywood, using non-actors, non-transgender actors, all natural locations, available light, handheld cameras. They used the same film template, basically, that Roberto Rossellini used back in the 1940s when he created the independent filmmakers template by doing Bicycle Thief in the Streets, and the Jean-Luc Godard used when he did Breathless 10 years later in the streets of Paris, that John Cassavetes used in New York when he did Shadows, etc. It's been the template that all filmmakers have used.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean Baker did it in high def on two
incredible.
iPhone 5s and made an award-winning film called Tangerine. Anybody who hasn't seen this film,
Fantastic.
get into this century, folks, please.
It's so good. It's so good. So good. For a lot of listeners, I'm sure they're gonna like eat this information up. But what advice would you give to cinematographers, people that are up and coming and trying to get into this industry?
Get your friends together, get an iPhone or what we shot Borrowed Time 3 on, a Blackmagic camera, which is just like no bigger than this square, but it's a real camera. Blackmagic camera, wireless mics that you can hide in the scene. As you saw, we just put them in the scene and do the scene.
Sounds amazing.
And no lighting, all practical or available light, and a drone that also a 4K drone that fits in your other hand that you can do establishing shots with and beauty shots with and transition shots with and walk and talk with and make a fucking movie. Get your friends together and make a movie and put it up online and hope to get found.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. That's great. That's great advice. I love that. Are you working on anything at the moment?
Well, I'm preparing to teach a course in daring, cutting edge, outside the box indie filmmaking this summer with a company with the Crest Film Academy. It's a new company that's just starting up with some former teachers and students from Academy of Art University in San Francisco, where I taught for a dozen years.
Fantastic.
And they called me and said, we're starting something up. Do you want to be part of it? I said, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so I'm putting together a course to teach to cover all the things that we're talking about here.
I love it. Well, that's exciting. Congratulations on that.
And of course, I'm looking for hoping Alan gets another film together and he'll call me in to direct a few scenes and take part. I'm so grateful to Alan because he called me about 10 or so years ago.
Yeah.
And he was just making films in the alleys of Paris with his friends. And he knew I had done Bloodsport and Kickboxer. And I admired his spunk and his tenacity and what he wanted to do. So I mentored him. I watched all of his films, gave him my tips from the top of how to make them better.
Yeah.
And he learned all the lessons and excelled what I taught him at. And you can see him now on all of his interviews. And he's going strong. And I'm so proud of Alan. He is a great young filmmaker. And his cinematographer, Luis, is a great young cinematographer, editor, brilliant team.
Yeah.
And I told them when we were making this film, you guys are going to be doing this long after I'm gone. I'm very proud to have met you and pleased to have helped.
Oh, yeah. It was absolutely amazing, to work with you. And, obviously I've known Alan now for about 12 years and he's always been just, a person that's super focused and dedicated and works really hard. And
yes.
And I remember reaching out to him for a project that I had, and he was like, "Sure, I'll do it." And that's how we began to start our friendship. And we've been friends ever since, and wanted to continue to collaborate with each other. So he's just like a big bro. He's my big brother.
Yeah, I'm very, 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 very pleased with Alan because he surpassed even my dreams for him. Yeah. And I'm so thrilled. I've done films with Clint Eastwood and Jean-Claude Van Damme and Dennis Hopper and Roy Scheider and all those guys and Shelley Winters and Sandra, and never got any awards. And this little film, Borrowed Time 3, that was done for a few $100,000 is getting so many awards.
It's crazy, right?
It's like, wow. Talk about being at the right place at the right time. I'm just so thrilled for Alan. He's out there pushing it and doing it. I'm very, very pleased and very proud of his work.
Me too. Yeah, he's a great guy. I always ask every guest on the show this question, and there's no wrong answer. So it's either one or the other, but just curious which one you're gonna choose. All right. So it's loyalty or respect. Which one would you choose?
Loyalty.
I like that.
Because loyalty gets you respect.
Right. Yep. Absolutely.
That's always been my way of working. And listen, I can tell you, I had one of the biggest guys in Hollywood be loyal for me, and he could have walked away anytime. That was Clint Eastwood.
That's incredible.
He shook my hand when I went in his office and said, "Okay, you've got it." I was the director of photography on Bronco Billy. All he gave me was a handshake. And then the union came after him. They tried to sue him. They tried to sue Malpaso. They tried to sue his producer. And he just said, guys, we had lawyers with off meetings with offices full of lawyers. He just said, fix it. This is my guy. I gave him my word, fix it. He didn't have to do that. He could have said, I'm sorry, David. I gave it my best shot, but it's not going to happen. Never wavered.
That's amazing.
And I was so, this is why this guy calls me anytime, needs me to crawl to a project for him or swim the ocean. I'm going to do it, give it my best shot, because he did it for me when he didn't have to do it.
Yeah. And that's a very rare thing to find in this industry that we're in. And when you find it, you just want to hold on to it tight, so.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
And there were other people around Clint that didn't have as good a rapport, that weren't as fortunate, that had problems. Even Sandra and his producer Fritz Maines had all kinds of problems. But I just couldn't believe how wonderful the man was about giving his word and keeping it. Once he gave it, that was it. That was chiseled in stone. He wasn't going to change. I thought that was a rare quality to find in someone in Hollywood, in Tinseltown.
It is, but it definitely gives me courage. I mean, I've definitely had my ups and downs, but when I remember finding my mentor, and I was like, there are good people here. It's refreshing to find it. Yeah, it does exist.
Well, I'm very proud of what I see that you've done. I haven't, your stuff, of course, but I look at your Instagram. I see all the photos and little things and little people. I've been, oh, this is a busy little bee.
Yeah, I try to be.
Yeah, you really are. This is what you have to do: is every day create, put one foot in front of the other, and keep going. Yeah. And all of a sudden, it's 10 years down the road, and you've accomplished a lot.
Yeah, definitely, 100%. And Your Honor, I actually wanted to let you know that. Yeah, well, that's you right there in the back.
I see. I can see.
If people don't know, that's the set of Borrowed Time, and this Patrick Kilpatrick and
Alan and yourself, and that's great. That's wonderful. That's really that was a great experience. I really enjoyed it.
Me too. It was really fun. But thank you so much for coming on. It was such a pleasure talking to you and just talking about just the cinematography experience of of like everything that you've done in your life. Thank you for everything, your work and contribution to film. You are absolutely incredible and amazing. You're legendary. So I'm honored to have you on.
Thank you. It's entirely my pleasure, Meosha, because you and what you're doing, you're going to be here long after I'm gone. And I'm very proud to have met you and have worked with you. You're a bright and talented and beautiful young lady. Keep on keeping on.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, thank you guys for listening. And always remember to live, love, laugh. Bye, guys.